Okay, so and regarding the drawing that I made in China, um, it probably is showing in reverse for y'all. But some of you guys had questions about its meaning. I've had several dreams in China. A lot of them have already come true. They were not, happy dreams at all. They were dreams about death, about people dying. I can tell you that I definitely had a dream about my dad before he passed, and that's what led me to call him before he died. I have these dreams, and it's not easy having these because it's like you wake up in the middle of the night and you're just like like, oh my gosh. And it's I just started writing down what was in them. It's not always very popular to say some things because at the time it doesn't make sense what you're about to say. But I have learned to get over the expectations or the liking of man, or the validation of man, to just give what has been given to me. Okay, so really fast, I was in China, and so censorship is what the blindfold says. It says censorship, right? And so I felt like China was really blinded because of the censorship that was done in society. Like, you can't check your Facebook, you can't check your Google, you can't check your email, you can't check your YouTube, you can't check any of these platforms. Twitter, all these platforms are shut down and banned in China unless you use a VPN. And in order to get a VPN, it can be somewhat of an ordeal if you don't already have one before you go to the country. I know because I definitely did not have a VPN before I left for China. And so it was very, very difficult for me. And so I felt like China was very blinded in terms of their worldview and accurate worldview standing because of their censorship. They had this impression that they were the best country in the world, almost like there was propaganda saying that how great they were and that they were the best, right? And obviously, there are strengths to China, but there are also many weaknesses. And I believe that censorship was one of them. I felt like it led to the stupidity. I don't want to say that the people were stupid, but the lack of awareness that people had on a social level because of censorship. Because of censorship, right? So you have this person who's in this environment, right? And they're blinded by censorship. And lo and behold, when I come back to America, I find out that there's censorship here in America too. Don't you know, when I landed at LAX airport and I got off of the plane filled with people, excuse me, who were natives of China, who did not have American citizenship at all, got off the plane. Some people were symptomatic, some people were asymptomatic, whatever, maybe they didn't have anything at all. And customs, CDC asks you 3 questions. Have you been to Wuhan? Are you symptomatic? And where are you flying from? Now, if you took a train from one part of China, like say from Wuhan, or from one other part of China to another, if you had been exposed to somebody who had been from Wuhan, there was no way for people to know that here in the States. You literally could lie. See, I was coming in from Nanjing, but my original place that I was flying from was Zhangjiajie, right? So it's like they didn't know about Zhangjiajie, that I was winter breaking in Zhangjiajie or whatever, neighboring areas. They didn't know that information. But and I didn't have to tell them. They would have never known. I spoke up then. I said, listen, this is a great tragedy. This was February 1st or February 2nd. You know, there's some people here who really are showing symptoms. Where's the quarantine? There was no quarantine. There was no mandatory quarantine when I landed. But all the news media outlets were saying how there's quarantine, you have to go into this place, and there's a special place to hold people from China. That's not true. And I can say that it's not true because I witnessed it. I even turned myself into the officials. I said, listen, I have been in China. Who knows who? There's millions of people in one city. I was like, who knows what I've been exposed to? Is there a place where I can self quarantine for 2 weeks before possibly transmitting it to somebody else? And they said, no, there is no quarantine. We see it on the news. We see that they're saying this on the news. It's very entertaining, but we don't quarantine anybody. The only people that they were willing to quarantine were government officials from America, diplomats who were in China at the time, and they were extracted by military measures to get back into America, and that they were being held in, I think it's San Bernardino or something like that. They were being held in a special quarantine in that part of California. So my family had to put me in quarantine. But the news was going on and on about that, right? We had the border shut down, right? So anyway, so the first thing is first. I feel like the censorship is not just a China problem. The censorship is a here in America problem. You've got videos that are taken down because they allegedly don't, that they allegedly violate the platform like YouTube. It's like, oh, we can't have this up here because technically, this upsets our community. This doesn't go with our standards. But see, to me, that is the epitome of a censorship. You can have girls half naked dancing in music videos. You can have guys cussing out things. You can have, shootings. You can have people dying literally on online platforms. But when you have somebody who's speaking the truth, then now we got to cover it up. That's not a China thing. That arguably, probably in varying degrees, is a worldwide issue, especially now, right? The stars on her shirt. So if you look at the Chinese flag, right? That's exactly how the stars look on the flag. It's like that, these things, right? So it's like over your heart is your patriotic affiliation, right? So this took several times of me going to sleep and waking up with dreams, okay? So some dreams had to do with censorship. Some dreams had to do with a feeling of your data, your information, your lifeblood was being sucked out of you and given it another entity, and it's being fed off to. So for example, I had a dream where I was walking down the street, and this really happened. I used to get street food, okay? I did. A lot of people get street food. It's a normal thing. It's illegal, but, and I came to find out, but people do it. And I used to get vegan street food because they could fry you up some stir fry, some vegan like stuff. It's really good. Anyway, because it was illegal, there was a white van that used to drive up to where I used to get my street food, and they would open up their door and they wouldn't shoot. they wouldn't make arrests. They'd pull out their phones and record. And it was the government. It was the Chinese government. They would record their phones. And so what the people who were cooking would do would be like, oh crap. And they would take their carts and they would try to drive off and boogie away, and so that they could hide or whatever. They wouldn't go far. They would just kind of go a little bit further in the street and wait for the car to go, right? Well, when I had my dream, what happened was they pulled up, but they were recording, and they were sending the feed to Russia. Okay? So the news feed, or the live feed of what people were doing, the data is what they wanted, and they were sucking it out of you, right? Well, here you have the three self-propaganda. So if you think about in China, the Chinese church, it's the three self-propaganda movement, which is an arm of the Communist Party. I wrote that petition to free Wang Yi because he was a pastor who was standing up strongly against it, and I think he's still in prison now. But I mean, this petition is to free Wang Yi because he refused to bow and bend the knee to the Communist Party. He said that no, our congregation is led by the Father, and we're not going to have an entity come in and tell us what we need to do in terms of how we're going to operate. You're not going to edit my sermons, for example, before I give them. You're not going to harass my church members because they will not read a Bible that has the 10 Commandments removed, okay? So that's where the three self-propaganda movement comes in. Well, this is injecting into her body the three self-propaganda movement, right? But if you think about that from like a spiritual standpoint or like a worldwide view, right? I believe that our environments can inject into us a mantra or a rhetoric that is self-promoting, but further contributes to the censorship or the blinding of the truth, right? So you can have, for example, a Facebook group that has 77,000 followers that claim that the two men who shot and killed Ahmed were right. That they were right in killing this 25-year-old young man while he was jogging, who was unarmed, but they hunt him down and they kill him like that. There is a Facebook platform, a Facebook group of 77,000 people who think that they were doing God's work. Self-propaganda. You've got people out there who really believe that they have the answers. They have the answers. They have the authority to speak on behalf of the masses and say, I know what you need and you need to adhere to my commands. It's like this one size fits all way of thinking. But usually people try to find truths that satiate and fulfill what they believe is right. People rarely search in places that they don't agree for truth, which is why falsehood is so popular nowadays, right? Okay? You shouldn't even have room for this. So then this staff is the ruling of the United States, right? And it's linked to this because we always trade with China. Whenever you trade, never lay down with the dog and think you're going to come up without fleas. You cannot get in bed with someone in any way without thinking that your ultimate desires are going to be affected by the other party. That's why you don't choose a bad business partner. So whatever it is, controlling wise, that you notice on that side, that you idealize, you can expect that there's going to be a transfer of that energy, that thought process, that spirit to where you are. And we can see that with this pandemic. Our rights have been literally taken away from us. They were taken away from us through the Patriot Act, but this Stafford Act has really done it. The ability to trace you is something that they did in China, because they can trace you through your WeChat app because of how you pay for things. You don't go up and pay with cash necessarily. You use they scan your phone through WeChat, and then you're golden, you're Gucci, right? You carry on because it's linked to your banking. Well, now they have a chip so that you can just scan your wrist and you can keep going. And it's not mandatory yet, but remember, we can't be blind by censorship or blinded by self-propaganda. We need to really look at what's going on and be honest about it. Here in this country, we're moving in that direction. A lot of people don't want to admit that. A lot of people have a problem with the doctors who are coming out saying, hey, you know what, Big Pharma, y'all are missing it. We have noticed that there are more people dying of the polio vaccination than they're actually dying of polio in Africa. That we don't necessarily have it all right. And Robert Kennedy Jr. said that there seems to be a correlation between 1989 and the spike in the needs in vaccinations and corresponding, I want to say, like pre-existing conditions like eczema or autism or asthma or food allergies. When Robert Kennedy Jr. was, I guess, younger, it was rare. It was atypical to see somebody who had a food allergy. But now it's just very commonplace. And it's like, well, what caused that? What caused that? he attributes it to vaccinations and the fact that babies, infants should not be exposed, and young children should not be exposed to these sort of enzymes at that age, that sort of sickness at that age, because their immune systems have troubles fighting it. And you don't know how that will manifest until much later in life, that there's not been enough case study to prove that this is something that should be done. Okay, his video is out. There's, hopefully they don't take it down too, because I've been noticing like a lot of the videos that I've been posting, they're taking them down. Censorship. This is a shame. This is a great tragedy. Okay, so a while back, and I posted this on Facebook, and this was not a very popular thing for me to say. This was my terrible rendition of a fighter jet. I know it's bad. I know it's bad. But in all seriousness, I had a dream about Iran and that there was going to be a nuclear blast in Iran. And you want to talk about being scared to post that on Facebook, that was something that we need to be aware about, that we need to be mindful of. I was so scared to post that, it's not even funny. What happened was I had two dreams. I had one dream that there was going to be an earthquake, and I didn't know when. I did know. I knew it was going to be the next morning. I did not know where. I did not know. I did not necessarily know all the details, but I knew. And the next morning there was an earthquake. And that's on my Facebook page. And then the next day I had a dream about Iran and that there was going to be a nuclear blast. Not saying that they had nuclear capabilities. What I am saying is that there will be a bomb blast. Now, I don't know if somebody is going to attack them or what, but that was from a dream, right? These are swarms of locusts. And what is coming to America is famine, right? It's famine. And then it's going to be all over the world. Because whenever you have an endangered species, like an insect or whatever, they're responsible for the pollination of plants. And without certain plants, you're not going to have the ability to feed livestock as well, and you won't be able to feed your humans as well. So there's going to be that. Now, this is like, how do I explain this? This is the other thing too. It's like some things are images and it's just really hard to explain. It's just shooting through. It's just, these are missiles they're shooting through. They're going to shoot through because of these things. The self-propaganda movement, the idea that one country is right, that one country's thought process or interests are right. There's going to be war, there's going to be panic, there's going to be famine, there's going to be death. Okay? Here, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the United Nations and the World Health Organization have the same emblem. The World Health Organization, however, has a snake on a staff. And I thought that that was symbolic of Moshe. Because remember, you were supposed to, like, if you guys know your Bible, your Old Testament, you know Moshe is his true name, but Moses, as some of y'all call him, he was instructed by God because the people were dealing with all these afflictions, right? They were dealing with these sores on their skins because they had been disobedient. And so what Yahuwah told Moshe, to do was to take a staff and take one of the snakes. The snakes were biting the people, right? He said, take one of the snakes and have it on the staff, and when they look up to the staff, their bodies will be healed, right? That was a type and shadow, or like foreshadowing of what Yahushua HaMashiach was for the people, right? So they look up to the one they've pierced. They will look up on the one they've pierced. Yes, that's where that comes from. Well, this snake, however, from the WHO organization, is actually of a pagan worship. I know. And so this snake is biting her because pagan worship and the indoctrination of organizations is inflicting pain, is inflicting more trauma. It's contributing to the censorship, really, the blindness to the truth. Because if you think about it, the way I see it, it's because you're the World Health Organization, you represent the world. And we know how many different diverse beliefs there are in the world. You are not going to stamp on your emblem the identification of any God. Why? Because that's not representative of a World Health Organization. If the United States of America says, "In God we trust," right? You can't serve a World Health Organization whose emblem celebrates a pagan god. Do you see how that's a conflict of interest? Okay, for example, if I'm throwing a party and I want everybody to feel welcome and I invite 100 people, what am I going to do? I want to play all kinds of different music. I'll probably do top 40. I'm not going to play to one demographic because I represent what? Everybody's interest. Well, same is true with this. I didn't understand that. And then I thought it was really funny that the United Nations has the same exact emblem, just minus the stake and staff. They're in cahoots. Like the powers that are governing the world. I don't know if some of you have seen the ID2020.org. If you've looked at the Alliance of the People, some of you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, in which case you really need to research. But on ID2020.org, ID2020, I as in igloo, D Delta 2020.org. This is a real website where Microsoft, if you look under the Alliance tab, where Microsoft has joined in with Rockefeller, with all kinds of different other companies. You can go look at the website and see all the different websites they've joined with. To create an ID, a digital ID that you have that shows and proves who you are. And they've been working on this since January of last year, of 2019. And some of us don't believe in the fact that this pandemic was a pandemic. Well, I believe that it was indeed taken advantage of. I think that, okay, whether or not you believe this was planned or not, I'm not going to argue that. I have my own beliefs, but I'm going to keep that out of this. I have noticed that there's definitely been a shift in how things are getting done, a shift in money, a shift in resources. There's been a shift. And so this ID that we're going to have, a digital ID, I don't know the full extent of that, right? Because say you don't get it. Say you don't get the chip. Say you say, you know what, I'm not going to get this. Does that mean you starve? Does that mean you can't go out in public? Does that mean you can't travel? What does that mean? What if it goes against your beliefs? What if you won't be able to buy or sell without it? And see, when people are desperate because there's famine, because there's death, because there's lying, because there's wars and rumors of wars, people get desperate. And so you might start off with a strong resolve to say, no, I won't take, and they call it the certification mark, okay? On ID 2020, if you scroll down, there is a linked page, one of their press release pages, and they call it the certification mark. If you don't take the mark, what are your implications? If you have kids and you don't take the mark, what happens? I'm going to bring some Bible to it. Okay? I got to bring the word into this, okay? So oh my goodness. We're in Yeshekel. which is Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 21. Even if I inflict my 4 dreadful judgments on Jerusalem, sword, famine, wild animals, and plagues, to eliminate both its humans and its animals, there will still be a remnant in it to be brought out, including sons, both sons and daughters. When they come out to you and see their way of life and how they act, then you will be consoled over the calamity I have brought upon Jerusalem, over everything I have done to it. Yes, they will console you when you see their way of life and how they act, and you will understand that it was not without good reason that I did what I did in Jerusalem, says Yahuwah. Like, if you go back up, the word of Yahuwah came to me, and this is at verse 12. Human being, when a land sins against me by dealing treacherously with me, so that I stretch my hand out over it and break off its food supply, sending it famine, eliminating both humans and its animals. If these 3 men were in it, Noah, Daniel, and Job, they would by their righteousness only save themselves. If I unleash beasts on the land, and they kill its children and desolate it, so that no one can pass through because of animals, even if these 3 men were in it, as I live, says Yahuwah, they would save neither sons nor daughters, only themselves would be saved, and the land would remain barren. If I bring the sword down on that land, saying, let the sword pass through the land, so that I eliminate both its humans and its animals, even if these 3 men were in it, says Yahuwah, they would save neither sons or daughters, only themselves would be saved. Or if I bring a plague into that land and pour out my fury on it in bloodshed, so that I eliminate both its humans and its animals, even if Noah, Daniel, and Eov were in it, as I live, says Yahuwah, they would save neither son or daughter, they would only save themselves. Okay, so what am I reading there? Okay, so people had a relationship or had covenant with Yahuwah, with their Elohim, right? And they deviated. And so the prophet, as many will call him Ezekiel, and I am struggling to say his name in Hebrew, I'm still learning, Yechezkel. So Yechezkel, right? He told this prophet to speak these things out and to tell the human race, look, this is what is going on. This is what will happen. Even if the most upright people were here, only they will save themselves, because their account is contingent on their obedience, and their obedience will no longer spread out and cover multitudes. No, it's only going to cover themselves, not even their sons or daughters. But even through all of this, if he unleashed his 4 beasts, his 4 judgments, which we're going to cross-reference here in Revelation in just a second, right? Even if he were to unleash these 4 judgments, there will be a remnant. There will be a remnant. There will be a grouping of people who turn back to Torah, who say, okay, we have accepted the Messiah, but we also know that we have work to do, and that work is already, there's an instruction manual for life. There's a way that you're supposed to govern yourself, and it's found in Torah. And the people are going to go back, and they're going to return to Torah. Not all of it, not the parts that the Messiah has fulfilled. You're not going to be doing animal sacrifices. You do not do animal sacrifices. But you are going to adhere to the way that you're supposed to live your life. You are going to see honor in the way that you live your life. People are going to say, you know what? This person's not perfect, but my goodness, I can tell by the quality of the workmanship and their life and their integrity that, man, you know what? It was good that infliction happened, because why? We were able to see the light and the salt of the earth, right? Okay? So bear with me. So if I go to the book of Revelation, which a lot of teachers like to stay out of, I don't know why. We need, if you have not opened up your word and gotten into the book of Revelation, we need to do that ASAP, because we're living in it. We're living in it. We're living in it. They're starting to take videos down. I'm gonna try to push this out as fast as I can, but yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna leave it at that. So this is the judgment that is supposed to befall the land, okay? So we're starting off. Remember, I was reading about the 4 judgments. We're in Revelation chapter 6. Next I watched as the Lamb broke the first of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living beings say in a thundering voice, "Go!" I looked, and there in front of me was a white horse. Its rider had a bow and was given a crown, and he rode off as a conqueror to conquer. When he broke the 2nd seal, I saw the 2nd living being say, "Go!" Another horse went out, a red one, and its rider was given the power to take peace away from the earth and make people slaughter each other. He was given a great sword. When he broke the 3rd seal, I saw the 3rd living being say, "Go!" I looked, and there in front of me was a black horse, and its rider in his hand a pair of scales. Then I heard what sounded like a voice from the 4 living beings say, 2 pounds of wheat for a day of wages, meaning it's going to be super expensive to buy food. 6 pounds of barley for the same price. Don't damage the oil or wine. When he broke the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living being say, "Go!" I looked, and there in front of me was a pale, sickly-looking horse. The rider's name was Death, and Sheol, Hades, were followed behind him. They were given authority to kill 1/4 of the world by these are the 4 judgments: by war, by famine, by plagues, and by the wild animals of the earth. And if you keep reading in chapter 6, it talks about the rest of the seals, because there's 7. But oh yeah, last part. The moon will turn to blood when all of these things are going to come to pass. Like 1/3 of living things in the ocean will die. That's what my vision told me. It's not hopeless. I know that what I'm saying seems like thing is hopeless. But just as there's a mark of the beast, there is a mark of our Father in heaven. There's a mark of our Father in heaven. You don't have to just take this mark. You don't have to just acquiesce to what's given to you. You don't have to be blinded by censorship. There is an answer to all of this, and it's in his word. He said that there is a mark. There is a mark of God. There is a mark of our Yahuwah, our Elohim. And I mean, I know that there are some people who call him different names, and we've got all these factions and these divisions in believers these days, and one says that it's this way, one says that it's that way. Look, we honestly don't have time for this at this point. Like, it's at this point where now it's like we can't even work together as a body because this person believes this and that person believes that, and they must be wrong. And then you go back and you talk about each other behind each other's back. Girl, don't you know that she a Messianic Jew now? She believes this or that. Or, oh, don't you know this and that and third? Don't you know she's this? Don't you know she's that? Don't you know he's this? Don't you know he's that? But we're all calling the Father our Father. We all believe in his Son. And we believe that through accepting him and being born again and being baptized, and by following his mitzvot, his commands of what he tells us to do in his word, that there is a transformation and that his Ruach lives inside of us, that his Holy Spirit, some call him, lives inside of us. And that we are convicted as we go through this thing called life. We are convicted to make right with our brothers and sisters. We're convicted to not tell lies. We are convicted and we say, you know what, we're going to honor our parents, for this is the right thing. We're going to put no one above our Elohim. We're not going to put anything or anyone above our Father in terms of worship, in terms of act, love, and deed. We give him all of our resources. We don't put any false gods out there. We don't accept false gods, right? We don't bow and bend the knee to pagan worship. We don't do that. I don't care how tempting it is. Solomon was, with all of his wisdom, with all of his splendor, failed to identify that yoking himself with people who served a different Elohim than he did led to him being drawn out of his own faith. That's why you cannot condone the worship of false gods. That you're going to hold the Sabbath day, because it is a sign between our Father and his people forever. Shabbat is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful day of rest. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so let me find this really fast, really fast. My video is getting long. In Revelation chapter 6, verses 11 through 13, where verse 12 states, "And behold, and I beheld, when he opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood." The moon became as blood, and I definitely saw that in one of my dreams. It was not a pretty picture. The stars fell from the heaven to the earth, just as a fig tree drops its leaves when shaken by a strong wind. The sky receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved in its place. The earth's kings, the rulers, the generals, the rich and mighty, indeed everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in caves and among the rocks and the mountains, and said to the mountains and rock, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one sitting on his throne, and from the fury of the Lamb. For the great day of their fury has come, and who can stand?" By the way, when I was talking about the mark of our Father, if you keep reading in chapter 7, it says, "After this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the land, on the sea, or on any tree. I saw another angel coming up from the east with the seal of the living Elohim," or Yahuwah. "And he shouted to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and sea, 'Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim on their foreheads." Okay? That is reminiscent of something I read in the Old Testament, where the mark on your foreheads was given to those who did not, who mourned for the atrocities that were happening in the world. You had people who were legit bothered by it. See, you've got people who are greedy, who will see situations like these and think about how they can get ahead, right? But then you have those who, they mourn. They mourn because they know this is not right. There's a lot of things that are not right in our world. They know that if they actually go by what the book says, not what people feel like saying, and they actually research where it came from, they know what things they should be mourning about. They know what things that you know what things should be grieving your spirit. You feed your spirit, man, and you know. And he said, the Father said, do not touch those. Do not give them any harm. Do not let any tragedy befall them, because they have the mark on their foreheads. They have my mark on their foreheads. They'll be sustained and kept in peace because they know me. They know me. And so the question is, folks out there is, do we know him? Do we know him? And this is not the time to be lukewarm. If you don't believe and you've decided, you know what, I'm not going to believe, fine. But for people who say that they believe, but have questions about whether or not what they believe is true or genuine, now is the time. Now is the time to be so sure that if somebody were to come to you and say, look, you're going to die today because of what you believe, you need to know. You need to know. You need to know. I think a lot of this was about the fact that China was able to get everybody to do one thing without any back and forth because of how well they've planted their censorship. You can't be disobedient really in China without receiving some huge ramifications, especially mainland China. You're not going to be able to be disobedient like that without suffering some huge ramifications. If I got visited for what little I was doing in terms of voicing my faith, can you imagine how anybody else would get, how if you revolt against what's going on, if you say no, I'm not going to do this, they ain't having it. And see, the United States had to have a back and forth conversation with the public about telling them what to do and how to respond to this COVID. And so now we have contact tracing. Now we can go back and see everything that you've done. This thing is the best spy that was ever created. And it's time out for that. Listen, I pray his perfect peace over you. This is not to scare anybody. This is not any of that. It's just, at this point, I've had way too many dreams. I've had way too many visions. I've woken up in the middle of the night way too many times with this stuff on my heart. And I haven't said nothing because it was weird. Nobody else was doing it. I didn't know anybody else who was doing it. And I didn't want to be looked at as like a weirdo. And then what if it didn't happen? I had all these doubts in my mind. Well, you're having these dreams, but what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't come to pass? What if you're wrong? What if you mistake it? And then I ask for clarity, and then I get clarity. Those thermometer reads where they read your forehead, that's practice for scanning. That's practice. It's conditioning. They are literally hurting us like sheep. And the question is, are you going to be awake? Or are you going to be blocked by censorship? Are you going to be blind to the truth? Are you going to let everything in your environment inject what it wants into you? Are you going to lean on a faulty foundation that has cracks in it? Or are you going to build your foundation in faith? And so that no matter what storm comes, you can stand. I love you, brothers and sisters. I pray for unity amongst the believers. Even if you don't believe the same as somebody else, that is not an opportunity to cast that person out. I think that person may or may not be in your life for a reason. And maybe you can share with them what you know, but it's not for you to make somebody believe as you believe. You can share what you know, and if somebody has a question, they say, hey, I heard this, I heard that. Hey, definitely share. Definitely share. But at this point, like for example, I don't call on Jesus. I call on Yahushua HaMashiach. I believe that Jesus was not his name because the letter J did not exist at the time that our Savior walked this planet. Just like December 25th was not his birthday. Just like, I could go on and on here. But I don't call on that name. Now, if I'm talking with somebody who does call on that name, am I going to judge them? No. But if they ask me about why is it that you do not pray in the name of Jesus anymore, I will tell them. I'll say, I went to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I looked and I researched and I learned the beginnings of Hebrew. And I understand how the spelling of the name sounds and why the roots are there of the word and how his name truly does mean Yahuwah is our salvation. Yeah, I can show from the prophets where that came from. Jesus, I can't do that because I took Latin and before J was there is Iasus, and it literally Jesus Iasus, it means earth pig. It does not mean his name. So I can give an account for that. Now, somebody else might say, you know what, that's preposterous, whatever, you're wrong, you know, whatever. That's their problem. That's not their problem, but that's their thought. I am not going to sit here and waste my time trying to convince somebody else to believe as I do, because I didn't always believe the way I do. And that's something that I had to search. When I figured out, I was like, you know what, his name could not have been Jesus. I started looking for the truth, and I asked the Father, and I fasted and prayed, and I said, please show me who you are, because I've let all these other people tell me who you are, and I need you to manifest and teach me about you, because I love you, and I want to get your name right. I want to call out on your name. And so I found myself in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I found myself in artifacts from before the Dead Sea Scrolls. The King James Version was made, I believe, in the 1600s by a council tasked by King James to look at the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew text, and come up with a Bible that sounded good while reading out loud. True statement. And you had different sects of believers in there, and they had their own agenda, and they kind of balanced each other out. But basically, that's how we get the King James Version that we have been swearing by for so long. But before that, you know, we had manuscripts that included way more books. I think it's like 80 something books or whatever. I mean, if you look at the Sefer, if you look at the Apocrypha, before the canonization efforts, we have had word for a long time before the King James Version, or before councils came together and decided to canonize. You know, we've had this, and see, now we can't claim ignorance, because the information is out there. All you have to do is research. Just research it how you would research your favorite thing. Don't let your favorite thing come greater or become more important than the one you're supposed to be serving the most. Don't put any other God before him. Make him first. Get to know him. And maybe your answers might be different than mine. I don't know. But at least try. And don't let it be because of that's what I was taught, or that's how I was taught. That's not good enough. Because people are obviously taught racism and they think it's right, and they're killing people because of it. Go back and research what you've been taught and really question if it's right. All right, I love you guys. Yeah.